What is up, everybody? This is JP, your online personal trainer, and today I'm here to talk about 5 major squat mistakes that I commonly see. Again, there's a few that I'm not going to talk about, like which I think are too common to talk about, like keeping your knees in line with your toes, not letting your knees travel too far over your toes, making sure your feet stay on the ground and your heels don't come up even a little bit. Basic things like that. But these are either one, controversial, or two, they're not controversial and everyone agrees that they're bad, but I still see people doing them. And there's a lot of people who don't know about this. I just watch a lot of videos, I do a lot of studying, and I tend to see these all the time at the gym. I mean, I seen it the other day at the gym. So to kick things off, number one, and this is probably my biggest pet peeve, is when people say you must go ass to grass. I've seen videos saying it. You do not have to go ass to grass, okay? You need to go as far down as your active range of motion lets you. For example, some people, when they hit a certain point in the squat, they get butt wink, which I'm going to talk about next. They get butt wink or a posterior pelvic tilt. Or they cannot keep their chest upright and they tend to fold over. Whatever it is, some people cannot just go to ass to grass. Honestly, most people cannot go ass to grass, okay? Again, this doesn't mean I don't think that depth is important, because trust me, depth is, but for most people, going down to their thigh is parallel with the ground, or going down to their leg makes a 90-degree angle is sufficient. That is more than enough to get a good range of motion, to stress the muscle to a certain degree. And think about it. I'm pretty sure the International Powerlifting Federation, the IPF, their standards are the crease of the hip must go to, well, I think, at or below the knee, which again is not much less. It's not much more than your thigh being parallel with the ground. It's a little lower than that, but that's not low. That's not ass to grass. To me, that's okay. That's as far as most people should go. Now, if you're only going a quarter squat because you don't stretch, or you don't do any a dynamic warm-up, or you don't squat that often, again, that's where you're the problem, okay? If you are stretching and you are doing dynamic warm-ups and you are squatting somewhat often, like twice a week, then your range, whatever as far as you can go down, you should not go down below that. Again, and by as far down as you should go, I mean, for example, with proper form. If you see your form start to break at a certain depth, don't go any less than that. Stop right there, and then that's where you should consistently stop on every single rep and from there on out. But if you can only go so far down, but you don't stretch and you don't do any dynamic warm-ups, then that's the problem right there. It's not your biomechanics at that point, it's the fact that you don't stretch at all. So first ask yourself that. Do you stretch? Do you do dynamic warm-ups? Yes. And then have someone look at you, record yourself, find out where your squat starts to falter, and then stop right there. Now, if you don't do any squat or dynamic stretching or stretches or anything like that, and you can only go down a quarter squat with good form, then you need to start stretching. But that's besides the point. Most people, regardless of stretching or not, cannot get their ass all the way down to the ground with good form, regardless of how much stretching they do. But I also don't think that you should just go down to a quarter squat. Stop ego lifting, go lower than a quarter squat, but again, you don't need to go all the way down to the bottom. Ass to grass is usually bad for most people. Now, don't get me wrong, some people who are genetically, I guess you could say, genetically gifted, they just, they came out with good genetics, and they got a perfect squat body. Like, they can squat to the ass to grass with perfect form, no butt wink, chest upright, tight core. Then, in that sense, if you were able to, if you're one of the very few people that can do that, then I don't see any reason why you wouldn't, unless you're like training for a powerlifting competition and you want to get used to squatting at just to that level, just to that depth. But other than that, if you're not training for any powerlifting federation and you got good squat mechanics, good squat biomechanics, then you should probably go down all the way to the bottom every single rep. I don't see the point. It's only going to put a detriment on your gains in the long run. Number two, and it ties to number one, is butt wink or posterior pelvic tilt. Naturally, we have a slight curve in our lumbar spine and our low back. You could have your friend record this, or maybe you just know you do it, or you see people. There's a certain depth for most people that when they keep going down, this small curve, normally your hips are slightly forward, just slightly. And that's technically neutral hips. You have this small curve in your low back. So when there's a certain depth where if you keep going down, your hips start to tilt backwards, almost like a cup of water. It starts to tilt back. You don't want that. If you think of a stick, if you had a twig and you were to bend the stick all the way back like that until it snapped, all the pressure is on the point where you're bending at. So if you keep going ass to grass, like I said in number one, which most people shouldn't do, and you keep getting butt wink, like your low back keeps rounding at the bottom of every single squat, you are going to have low back problems. Again, you could go to Google, type in butt wink. It's going to show you a perfect picture of posterior pelvic tilt. Remember, that's the same thing, butt wink and posterior pelvic tilt. They're just different terms. But that is not good. So again, that's one of the reasons why you should not go ass to grass. And again, if you're having excessive butt wink because you don't stretch, that's an entirely different problem. But even for most people who do stretch and they do dynamic warm-ups, there's still going to be a point where they do get butt wink because, again, most people aren't just made, they can't squat all the way to the bottom. So again, you need to correct that, stretch properly, make sure you stretch your hamstrings, make sure you do a dynamic warm-up. Over time, your range of motion is going to get better, but again, don't expect it to keep getting better to the point where you can go ass to grass. Number 3, not locking out hips. Again, some people, the two biggest problems with locking out the hips that I see are when people kind of connect locking out your hips with locking out your knees. Again, I'm not against locking out your knees. Some people are. I'm not saying you could slam your knees shut when you lock them. Again, I don't have any pain with it. Let's just say you don't want to lock out your knees. You can still lock out your hips without locking out your knees. Most people, a lot of people I see, they do this. When they unrack the bar, their hips are back and their butt is pushed out like that. And they'll squat down, and when they come back up, their butt is still out. When they're not locking out the hips like this, you need to completely lock out your hips. Now, don't hyperextend, but lock them out completely. Again, if you could try this yourself, you can lock out your hips while also keeping your knees a little bit unlocked. So you don't have to completely lock out your knees to lock out your hips. But what I'm saying is to get maximal contraction of your glutes, and your glutes is one of the prime movers for hip extension, you need to completely lock out your hips at the top of a movement. And now the other problem I see with people not wanting to lock out their hips is they say, well, I'm losing tension on the quads, or I'm losing tension on the muscle. Well, one of the biggest factors for muscular growth is taking a muscle into maximal contraction. You want to fully contract that muscle. And again, if you want a glute is one of the biggest muscle groups on the human body. If you want to get for girls or guys or what, if you want to get a big ass, if you want to get a strong ass, if you want to have a strong squat, you need to fully lock out your hips. Again, it's one of the, along with the hamstrings, it's one of the prime movers in hip extension. So it would be like if you were doing a bicep curl or a tricep extension and you stop right here and then you don't pull it. With anything else, everyone else wants to get a maximal contraction. So make sure you do that at the top of a squat. Now, if you don't want to spend too much time up there, that's fine. If you're doing squats and you come down and then you come up, lock out your hips, then immediately go back down. Again, you're not losing tension. You're just coming up, locking out briefly, then going back down. Again, I would almost never recommend not locking out your hips unless you have two different sets of squats, one where you're not locking out hips and then one where you are. That's fine if you want to target a different range of motion. But most people don't do that, and that causes a lot of problems. It could cause low back pain. It can cause, again, you're just not as stable as you would be if you completely contract your glutes. Okay, number 4, not getting tight before unracking the bar. Most people, for people who do back squats, they have their weight on, they get under the bar and they just pick it up and then walk back. They don't get tight, nothing. Now, everyone who lifts weights, their ultimate goal is to get stronger. You ultimately want to lift heavier weight. Now, if you get to the point where you're lifting hundreds of pounds, you can't just get under the bar and stand up. And if you do this and you're like, oh, I get tight, well, you're probably not, you're one of few. What I would do is get under the bar, and before you put a little bit of pressure on the bar, but before you take the bar off the rack, what I want you to do is work from the top down, pinch your shoulder blades together, get your core tight, get your low back tight, get your glutes tight, get your quads tight, and then boom, then unrack the bar like that. But make sure you brace down and get everything tight before you unrack the bar. The biggest problem with this is, again, when you start getting to the hundreds of pounds and you start getting really strong, that's a lot of weight on your body with no support. And again, that's one way right there that you can really hurt your spine and hurt your back. So if you want to continue to squat and continue to be healthy, make sure you brace before you actually pick up the bar. Number 5, this isn't a super common one, but it still does happen, is some people recommend, maybe it's a friend or hopefully it's not a trainer or a bad trainer, but some people recommend a specific foot stance and they say everyone should do that one foot stance for a squat. For example, you may have had someone tell you, oh, you have to go just outside shoulder width. That's how you should squat every time. Again, this all applies to basically, it all ties in together, is that not everyone has the same biomechanics. Not everyone has the same leverages when it comes to their femur, their tibia for a squat. So I do squats wider than shoulder width, way wider than most people. I wouldn't consider it a sumo squat, but it is wider than most people because I can't do a narrow squat. If I do a narrow squat, I'm not going to be able to go that far down. Again, I'm just not really biomechanically built to do squats that well. That's just me. But to even get down like to a respectable level in a squat, I have to go wider. So one foot stance, like a width of feet is not for everybody. You know, everyone's going to be different. So if you've ever had anyone tell you you have to do this foot stance, they're wrong. Again, their biomechanics are not your biomechanics. Now, if you have a trainer that analyzes you and tells you that based off of your measurements, your femur length, based off of watching you do the squat, this foot stance looks like it's going to be best for you. Now that's completely different. They're looking at you and they're analyzing you specifically and they're telling you this is probably what's going to work right for you. But I'm not talking about that. That's an exception. That's obviously the trainer knows what they're talking about. But I'm saying that if the trainer says that this foot stance everyone should do, they're automatically wrong. Again, everyone's a little bit different. So again, all of these, make sure you do or don't do them. Make sure you lock out your hips. Watch the butt wink. You don't have to go ass to grass, but also don't do ego lifting and don't do quarter squat. If you like these tips, please like the video below. Again, get a friend to watch my videos. Get a friend to subscribe. You could go to my Facebook page, like that page. Leave any questions you want on my Facebook page. It's JP Personal Trainer. I'd appreciate it. If you have any questions, please leave them down below. I'll keep making videos. But until next time, peace.